Converted Man here. The Distributist has a Skeptic challenge. Attention, Amazing Atheist Armored Skeptic, Renestus, and Thunderfoot. Really? That's it? Just those people? Can I respond to this challenge? I'm a skeptic. I'm gonna respond to the challenge anyways. I wonder what it's gonna be. I'm gonna have to dump ice on my head again. That was a weird challenge for ALS. I'm not sure why, but it worked. People donated to ALS, so this will be like a skeptic challenge like that, right? Wonder what it's going to be about. Should be good. Let's find out.
Right here. Christianity may be taught like an idiot. Because there's a single theist argument that has been refuted a billion times by me and countless other we destroy them. We absolutely own them. And we're I'm smarter, not twice. By order of magnitude. We absolutely own them. Here's why I'm going to God. I can't get clear enough. We destroy them. I can't get clear enough. Destroy them.
Well, aren't these responses salty? So, last week, in coordination with a video response I was making, I accidentally stumbled across the Skeptisphere again, and with the exception of the stuff having to do with the fight against progressives and the SJWs, I really haven't looked at this community for quite a while, and I couldn't help but just see what all of the really skeptical people were saying about religion and Christianity, and wouldn't you know it, they're still at it. And not only that, it seems like everyone thinks they've won.
If by everyone you mean the few individuals that you've picked and then decided to find videos to cherry pick from, then yeah, every one of those people that you've decided to grab video clips from that seem to support your idea that everyone is doing this, then I guess, yeah, you're right. It's not like you cherry pick / strawman this at all. You did though. You really did. So I hope you have an actual argument to make and an actual challenge to make for the skeptic, or I'll have wasted my time and energy and be rather irritated. So let's see if you actually have a challenge for me.
They've accomplished everything. They've knocked down all the Christian arguments, and their worldview is uncontested.
Sort of a important point to make here. Atheism and skepticism are not worldviews. They might be part of a worldview, but they are in and of themselves not a worldview. Although you could make maybe a better case that skepticism might be seen as a worldview, but atheism, no, you couldn't make that case. Although apologists have tried to make that case because it's really useful to then construct a straw man based on that case. But no, it's not a worldview because it's not a prescription, it's a description. Skepticism would fall in the same vein, although, again, I guess you could try to make a somewhat better argument that skepticism could be seen as a worldview depending on how you go about it. But typically speaking, it wouldn't be. But that's kind of a side point. The main point here is you seem to be complaining that people are supposedly celebrating a victory which has not been earned. And if they were actually doing that, I would say, yeah, that's kind of lame to do. The victory isn't won because religion is still out there. People hold silly and crazy beliefs. So until that day when all are one comes, there's no victory to be had. Now, as far as the arguments, they've been demolished and debunked and destroyed multiple times, years before some of us were even born. So you could celebrate that fact and be correct in celebrating that, because all of the classical arguments for God have been shown to have one or more logical fallacies by multiple atheists and skeptics, and even sometimes, but very rarely, theists have said, hey, yeah, there's a problem here. Unfortunately, that the theists admitting that there's a problem is extremely rare. But nonetheless, yeah, people have shown that there's problems with these arguments, and yet we keep hearing the same arguments. No new arguments are put forward, or they're retellings of the same argument, just with a slight variation in words, but not in structure, so that it would actually fix the problem that the argument has. The logical fallacies still are there. You point them out. The apologist and or theist denies that it's a fallacy and or refuses to acknowledge that it's a fallacy, and or even if they accept that it's a fallacy, will just kind of backpedal and say that it doesn't matter anyways, or what have you. There's all sorts of excuses that I've run into for why these philosophical arguments that are put forward by theists and apologists that have been demolished and debunked and destroyed and dismantled and shown to be full of logical fallacies are still in some way useful. It doesn't seem to matter to the apologists that we've done this over and over again and that this has been done over and over again in the past. But it has been, and so I guess you could celebrate that, yeah, we've beaten all those arguments to a pulp. I don't know why you would celebrate that. The theists certainly wouldn't ever acknowledge that that's a celebration that's worth having, because they're not going to acknowledge that the arguments have been destroyed anyways. But even if somebody is celebrating it or whatever, who cares? What's the argument that they're presenting? That's what matters, and that's what needs to be attacked. Not this cherry-picked straw man of, well, they're celebrating these victories and they really don't have a victory yet. Who cares? Even if that was true, which it isn't, but even if it was, who cares? What's their argument? If they don't have one, fine. You point out they don't have an argument, move on. But you're not doing that. You're going after a straw man, cherry-picked straw construct of the. That doesn't work.
But then it occurred to me that I really needed to ask a question to all these good old-fashioned atheists and skeptics like T.J. Kirk and Vernaculus and Thunderfoot. And that is, despite all the confidence you have that you've thoroughly destroyed and trashed the Christian arguments for God and the old-fashioned traditionalist worldview, are you guys really happy with your own skeptical philosophy's take on the world? Are you confident in its ability to handle the questions that humans have in the modern age? Because I've been watching these atheist versus theist debates for a really long time, both when I was an atheist and after I converted to Christianity. And always in the back of my mind, both when I was on the atheist side and when I was on the theist side, I always wondered, what was really in store? What was going to flower forth from this skeptic view of the world?
Okay, so there's a couple of questions here. Are you happy with your skeptical worldview? Are you satisfied with that? Do you think it's going to be able to answer the questions that we have in this modern age? Not sure why it would matter if it was a modern age or not. I don't know why happiness would be relevant to anything at all. Maybe I'm miserable in my estimation of how the world works. Maybe the reflection of reality that I see is so dim and horrible that it just makes me shriek in terror and cringe and die a little bit inside. But maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just like, yeah, okay, well, that's the way it is. But maybe I'm not happy about it either. Maybe I just don't have any feelings about it. But the feelings, who cares what I feel about it? That doesn't make it true or false. So I don't really know why this matters. But since you asked if I'm happy with my skeptical view, or however you want to say that, my answer is I'm neither happy nor unhappy. I'm just the view that I have. I don't have any emotions about it at all. So there you go. I'm not sure what use that information is to you, but now you have it. The next question is, do I think that skepticism, can answer questions in the modern world? Well, it can answer questions at all. No, because that's not what skepticism is. Skepticism isn't answering questions. That's not a function that it does. It's about doubting things, and you can also then add investigation as part of that model, but it by itself, to be skeptical is just to doubt. That's it. So there's nothing with that necessarily makes you be able to answer any question. But maybe that's not what he means when he's asking this question. Maybe what he means to be asking is, can naturalism, materialism, atheism, skepticism, etc., answer questions? Well, materialism and naturalism, possibly, if they're within the scientific endeavor, yeah, they can, that can answer questions. When you apply the scientific method to observations, then there are things that you're going to find out about how things work. And that will answer many questions that you might have. But what about the big questions with big in all capital letters? What about them? Well, can science answer those questions? No, it seems unable to, so we have to use philosophy. The atheism can't answer the big questions of why we're here or whatever. So what? Why does that matter? Well, because they're questions that we have. And did you expect every question to have an answer? Maybe there isn't an answer. Ever think about that? I mean, seriously, consider the possibility that the question that you might have, whatever that question might be, doesn't have any answer at all, either because the question itself is malformed or incoherent, or that it's just a fact of the reality that there isn't an answer to it. Why did this happen? No reason. There is no why. It just did. The answer is it happened. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe there isn't an answer. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. But not being able to provide an answer doesn't mean that the philosophy is flawed in some way, shape, or form. Perhaps the philosophy is more humble in approaching it and saying, we don't know all the answers. We don't have all the answers, and we're not going to pretend like we know or have all the answers. We're going to look and see if we can find the answers, and until we do, we're going to keep saying, I don't know. And maybe we'll always be saying, I don't know to certain questions, or maybe we'll always have to say, there is no answer that we know of for the answer to that particular question. Because maybe that's how things are. And I'm okay with that mystery. I'm okay with that question mark. I'm okay with not knowing. I'd love to be able to solve the mystery. I'd love to know the nature of reality, the nature of nature. Those would be great things to know, to find out. But I'm not the one that's going to find those out. Some scientist somewhere, or a group of scientists, is going to figure that out. Maybe one day, but maybe not. I don't know. And that's okay. It's okay not to have the answer. But you don't always have to know what the answer is to know what the answer is not. Off the top of my head and your head, I would suspect that you wouldn't know what 5,727.7 to the power of pi r square is, but you would know that the answer isn't 0. Because that's not how math functions. You would know that it's going to be an answer that has a decimal place in it. You would know that it's going to be a number that's bigger than the one that you started with, because you're multiplying and you're doing a power by and you're adding pi in there, so it's going to be some sort of a rational number. You know a lot of things about it, and you know a lot of things about what it isn't, even without necessarily knowing what the answer is. And that's how I view skepticism, is I don't know X, Y, and Z, but I can maybe figure out what they aren't, and I can maybe know something about them, but maybe not the whole thing. But it's not really this kind of worldview where you can extract answers from it, because you're going to have to look to something else for that. The scientific method, for example. That's probably the best example of a methodology that I know absolutely works every single time. That and mathematics, and maybe logic. And that's, what I've got to work with. And if that's unsatisfying or unsettling to you for whatever emotional reason, well, oh well. Emotions shouldn't play any part in our investigation into what is true or false. Bernard Russell said, ask yourself only, what are the facts and what is the truth that those facts bear out? So I think that is the best you can do with some of these questions that people have about certain things is sometimes there isn't an answer, even though we desperately want and need one. And maybe recognizing that and accepting that is better than pretending that we do actually have an answer. Or maybe it's not. But it's more honest.
It's always sort of implied that through skepticism there's going to be some new healthy take on reality, something that will really exceed what came before it, and I'm just looking at the world right now and wondering, you guys are confident that you've defeated Christianity. How does whatever you've replaced it with really measure up? How do you answer the questions that we have before us in the world today?
Usually I go with lobsters exist and see if the other person will agree at least with that, and then go on from there.
It's easy to just cross your arms and say, you can't convince me, while you snark at all the previous ideas that other people have had. It's a good deal harder to actually have a conversation with an intelligent interlocutor over some actual real issue that needs a solution. And this is a question that all internet atheists and skeptics should be asking themselves. Is your movement a one of self-congratulation or a one of genuine inquiry?
It's a very loaded question there, because it assumes that there is an atheist movement in the first place, and I reject fully the idea that there is an atheist movement, or that there really ever could be something that you could point to and say, that's an atheist movement. Because atheism's not a worldview, and it just doesn't function like that. There might be movements that have atheists in them, but to say it's an atheist movement, it's just... No, I just don't see that. So I can't answer this question because, well, it's a loaded question, and I see no evidence that there's an atheist movement in the first place. So there's no answer to this loaded question. So there you go. Moving on.
Because if it is indeed one of genuine inquiry, you'll find other intelligent people who disagree with you and actually have a conversation about the positive ideas that need to be discussed in the modern world.
Like what? What topic do you want to talk about? Or what topic do you want to debate about? I mean, it might not be one I'm particularly interested in debating or talking about, because it might not be one that I know a lot about, or maybe it's just one I don't care about or not interested in. But with leaving this vague notions just out there, it doesn't help anyone to know what it is that you're complaining about. What is it that you want to talk to people about? And, hey, you don't have to call out big atheists to get somebody to come and talk to you. But presumably, since you're calling out atheists, you want to talk about something to do with theism, about something to do with the supernatural, with God and the afterlife and things like that. If not, well, then what the bleep's your complaint?
So at this point, I want to put out an actual challenge to all the big-name internet skeptics and atheists on YouTube. And here I'm very much talking about TJ, the Amazing Atheist, Vernaculus, Armored Skeptic, Thunderfoot. It's time to meet the Christian worldview and the traditionalist worldview in conversation.
Okay, well, we finally have our challenge. Well, the challenge made to these select individuals. So you're interested in talking about these ideas. Are you only interested in talking about these ideas with big giant names that you've thrown out there? Or are you really interested in talking about these ideas? That is to say, would you talk about these ideas, whatever they are, with me? I'm happy to have a conversation with you about Christianity, theology, religion, the supernatural, God, devils, demons, angels, spirits, souls, heaven, hell, and the rest of it. I'm happy to talk to you about those things and tell you why I don't believe that any of them are true and what that means to me and how I view that and what that means or doesn't mean for humanity, yada, 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 whatever. I don't know what you want to talk about, but I'll talk to you about it on my channel, or heck, I'll go on your channel. And then there's the great debate community. You can join that and talk to all those people. And you can get some more exposure there. It's not huge. It's not big-time YouTuber exposure, but it's something. And I know some atheists that I can tell about your stuff, and they'll watch me talking to you, so they might have some questions for you anyways, and they might seek you out on their own to try to have a hang out with you. And there you go, some more exposure. Maybe it's not huge, but it's something. Because I know we kind of want the exposure. We want to get out there. We want to be seen and heard. I know that's a part of the YouTube game, so I'm not going to chastise you for going after ginormous YouTubers trying to get their attention so that they'll talk to you and get you some more subs and views. I'm not going to say that there's anything wrong with that, per se. But if you're going to say, well, I'm interested in talking about these ideas, then you must really be interested in talking about those ideas. Therefore, the conclusion would be that you're willing to talk to anybody about these ideas, even people with, a couple hundred subs or whatever. Unless you're really only interested in talking about these ideas with big, giant names. And one could then add, perhaps because you want the subs and views. Maybe you really are interested in the ideas as well, but, people are going to be a little bit suspicious. Just saying. Anyway, so that's my response to this challenge. You don't have much else in the video worthwhile responding to, so I'm going to skip the rest and leave it alone. Although you had a lot more straw man and logical fallacies. So, yeah. Now, you mentioned that you were an atheist and you converted into theism or something like that. Or maybe you're neither. I'm not really sure now. I'm kind of confused on what your position is. But I'd love to hear what amazing thing convinced you that there was a God. That would be interesting. Especially a particular type of God. I'd like to hear that story. So maybe you have that. A video I could watch about that or something I could read. I don't know. But anyways, I responded to your challenge. So, hey, pay attention to me. Whee!